Everyone, welcome back to another Chick Tract, and as usual, this is a very general trigger warning. I have no idea what we're about to read, and knowing Jack Chick, we could find things like religious trauma, homophobia, racism, sexual assault, etc. So if that's not something that you're in the right headspace to deal with, I will link a different playlist in the details section below. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we are on Tract 4, The Gay Blade. Don't know if Zorro's going to make an appearance here, and we have a little description. God judged Sodom for the homosexuality of its people. Jesus can deliver anyone from this sin. I feel like it might be talking about some of the same stuff we have already discussed, and I really like the cover art. I mean, it looks very fancy. It also looks very 70s. I wonder when this was produced, and we can kind of check. All right, 2000. So in the year 2000, this is how Jack Chick thought gay people are dressing. It really, there's some kind of indication here, just kind of how outdated his beliefs are. I wonder if we're going to get any comments about grid instead of AIDS. I wonder if there's going to be any comments about, there was this belief, this urban legend, I don't know what you want to call it other than a total lie, that men in San Francisco were wearing rings, and the rings had some kind of defect. So when they shook your hand, the ring would cut you and infect you with HIV. So we'll see. We'll see what Jack Chick has on offer. Okay, so we have our pastor, priest, whatever, religious figure here, and he is saying, wilt thou have this man as thy wedded spouse? And I like that because before we saw Jack Chick had two gay men that were married, and then one of them introduced the other as his wife. So I will be describing what we see just in case anybody is listening to this in the background and not actually watching the screen. So we have one of the gentlemen says, I do. And in the next couple panels, we've got them leaving the wedding service. We got a guy throwing rice. Again, they're looking like they're from the 70s. We've got that curly type perm. We have the tinted sunglasses, which I can't say much about because I usually wear tinted sunglasses due to my migraines. I noticed there's almost entirely dudes in attendance. I don't know. There's not really much else to say here. In the next panel, the two men are in a car, and on the back of the car it says just married, and Jack Chick has inserted a comment here. Is this something new under the sun? No, I'm afraid not. Which, kudos to Jack Chick, because a lot of Christians of his time period and of this level of fundamentalism, I remember being taught that this is a new thing. People are being gay to be trendy. They're being gay to be sinful. They're rebelling against the church, etc. And in reality, they probably don't even think about the church. But this idea that gay people were like a new invention of, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that gay marriage was a new invention, that's totally not true. And at least Jack has that. So let's see what else we got. We got two people that look like they are very, very from that time period, the 70s again. This is, I can't even describe to you how fabulously creepy these men look. The one in the front, just he's got a creep vibe, and he has a very strange hairdo. There's this idea that gay men are effeminate. That's kind of how Jack Chick and people like him believe. And it does look like this guy has like a late 60s, early 70s updo, like a beehive, but a really thick curly beard. And his companion appears to be wearing a woman's blouse and carrying a purse. So again, there's that kind of feminizing of these guys, which, you know, if that's how they want to dress, great. But this idea that that's the only way that they can present, that gay men can only present themselves in some type of culturally feminine way, that's definitely a Jack chick stereotype. The mother in the background covering her kid's eyes. Gulp, she says. Or she thinks gulp. I don't know how you think gulp, but this kind of reminds me of something that my cousin had mentioned, where he said he doesn't really care if people want to dress however they want to dress, and gay people want to dress very overly sexual with like hot pink fishnet stockings or whatever. He said that I just don't want, you know, my son to see that. And I asked him why not. And he said, well, you know, it's because it's so sexual. And I said, well, what would your 6-year-old kid, this hypothetical child, what would your 6-year-old kid be knowing about sex? If he sees somebody dressed in bright colors, he's going to think, oh, how interesting, or that person looks funny. Is that person like a clown? Are they a superhero? Are they, you know, some kind of character? Is this like a cosplay or a costume or something? They're not going to think, wow, this man likes to put his penis into other men's buttholes. Like, they're not going to think that as children. And so this mother covering the eyes of her child because two men are linking arms, and she's shaking, she's frightened, her face is frightened. Her kid doesn't know what's going on, but he just knows whatever mom is protecting him from is as bad as, you know, watching like a little cat get run over by a car or something. So this is a really, the children don't have these thoughts. Like, they don't look at this and say, wow, sex. They look at these two guys and think they're hanging out. You know, we're the ones that put these ideas into their head as adults. So we got the lambda symbol, which used to be recognized as more of a common gay symbol. Again, back in the day, like in the 2000s, this was not something people were using for gay symbols. The rainbow was a lot more common. Triangles were a little more common, but this lambda, this is really outdated. So Jack Chick is definitely showing how little he has updated his thinking. So it says, the gay revolution is underway. To most people, it's a big joke. But is it really? No, it's not a big joke. Why? I like that he thinks that it's a big, that most people think it's a big joke. No, most people either don't really care or think, yeah, you know, it's about time that we allow basic rights and protections to people that are queer. Some people are very passionate about that how dare we deny, you know, basic rights and job protections to people just because they're queer. But I don't think anybody thinks it's a big joke. The church that I used to go to, this was a big threat. So even though they didn't take it seriously in terms of the demands, or the demands of like equal rights, they didn't take that seriously. They also did not take it as a joke. So I'm not sure which people Jack Chick hangs out with, or why he thinks most people think it's a joke. Maybe he thinks people don't take it seriously as like a threat against God, but not as a joke. He also mentions here the Greek letter lambda, the gay militants say, symbolizes unity in the face of oppression. Cool. Why is that? Why is that bad? You know. In the next panel, we have a police officer facing away from us, facing towards a crowd. And the crowd looks very angry. We see a lot of, again, men that are supposed to be gay. I guess we see gay power, gay revolution, gay power, gay revolution. Those are all that the signs say. One sign has a lambda. Cool. What about the rest of the, the LBT, And, we get this wonderful, we're just jumping right in here. Out of Satan's shadowy world of homosexuality, in a display of defiance against society, they come forth. Those who suffer the agony of rejection, the despair of unsatisfied longing, desiring, endless lusting, and remorse, crying that gay is good. Their tragic lives prove that there isn't anything gay about being gay. For those of you that are not aware, the first gay he's using means happy. So kind of fallen out of use. So again, that kind of goes back to Jack's really outdated word choice and stuff. But I think Jack is missing the point here, that the reason that it's that tragic lives, it's because of people like him. It's not that inherently being gay causes rejection. You don't like smell the gay on somebody and then they're rejecting, oh gosh, that person is a gay. Ooh. It's not like this inherent thing. You're not inherently despaired and unsatisfied and remorseful and tragic. It's the society that says it's okay to not give you the same rights as everyone else. It's the society that says, if a gay person is killed, it's not that big of a deal. Ha ha ha, we did everyone a favor. We have parents that talk about, if my son is gay, I'm going to kill him, or reject their children for being gay or transgender. This has nothing to do with being gay or trans. This has to do with the society being disgusting. And Jack really missed the point here. He seems to think inherently that being gay produces tragedy, and no, that's not the case. In the next panel, we have some kind of speaker, it looks like, with two women around him. Gays with quotations. I don't know why he included quotations. We call people gay. Gays and lesbians are common today on TV sitcoms and talk shows. Homosexuals are regularly invited to speak at clubs, churches, and even school classrooms. Their cry is about equal rights. Militants boast that homosexuality is normal, healthy, even a desirable form of sexual outlet. I don't know if it's desirable as a form of sexual outlet. I think it's more people saying there's nothing wrong with it. So I don't think he's got it right there either. In the next two panels, we have just a collection of people. There's two men holding hands underneath an American flag, and then in the next one, there's just like a big group of people. So in this first panel, it says they occupy all kinds of jobs and professions in business, education, and government. They no longer try to hide their identity. Good. Good for them. Good. They claim that they include 10% of the population, but reliable studies indicate under 2%. Now, normally Jack Chick actually makes a reference. He'll usually include his sources. No sources are given here. And it says, has such a condition ever existed before? Let's see. Now, maybe he's talking about social condition, but overall, I mean, how does he look at this and put this together and draw it and write it and tell it as part of the story and not realize he's the bad guy, right? That the rejection of gay people causes them to live tragic lives, and that having people be more open about it, that recognizing that being queer is it's just a variation on life, not even human life, but also other life as well. How is this a negative thing? I mean, imagine writing that. They occupy all kinds of jobs and professions in business, education, and government. They no longer try to hide their identity. Imagine writing that and thinking, how dare they? How dare they try to have a regular life? How dare they? Imagine thinking that and not realizing you're the bad guy. On the next page, we have, it looks like archaeologists, and they're looking at something and grimacing. One guy's covering his eyes, the other guy's covering his mouth. So it says in 1904 to 1909, archaeologists just uncovered Canaanite ruins depicting their religious worship of about 1500 BCE. We use BCE in this house. City of Gizor, Professor McAllister, ISBE. So one guy covering his mouth says, I'm gonna vomit. And the guy covering his eyes says, good Lord, I can't believe my eyes. We can't publish this. It's filthy. Now, as somebody who teaches history, this kind of thing really frustrates me when we want to sanitize parts of history and make it seem like it was not human. A lot of the stuff that happens back in the day, it's the same stuff that happens now. And so this idea that we have to kind of cover it up, I'm reminded of one of the first discoveries and translations of the ancient Mayan texts. And one of the head archaeologists was really, really concerned about the appearance of the Maya. He had grown to really love the Maya. He dedicated his professional life to the Maya, and he wanted to really show how different they were from these bloodthirsty Aztecs. And he finds out that they are as bloodthirsty, if not more bloodthirsty, and they have a lot of ritual sacrifice. They have a lot of casual sacrifice. And he was really shocked by this. So he had tried to hide it. And as more people were able to translate the Mayan hieroglyphs, they found out that he was hiding it. It also reminds me of, I think his name was Champollion, the first person that had managed to read Egyptian hieroglyphics. And he had been funded by the Catholic Church. So one of the things that they kind of pushed him to do was to prove, or to, once he was able to decipher the ancient Egyptian texts, to show parts, or to really emphasize parts that had supported the Bible and their interpretation of the Bible. And so, of course, he's going through this and finding that at the time there was supposed to be this great flood that destroyed all these civilizations. Here, the ancient Egyptians not only were thriving, but never even mentioned a flood, local or global. So this was something he ended up writing down in his journal and not publishing it. It was published by his granddaughter after he died. And the reason, he was just so worried that if he were to share something that went against the Bible, that he would be hated universally and also have to be somehow financially beholden unto the Catholic Church to like pay them back for finding stuff that wasn't in line with what they wanted him to produce. And so this idea here that Jack Chick is trying to portray, that, oh, these poor archaeologists, they had to sanitize history. No, how dare they? If you're not ready to find all kinds of the human story, don't be an archaeologist. That's all I'm going to say. So at the bottom, he writes, the evidence clearly shows why God told Israel, and this is from Deuteronomy, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. It was the only way to keep the filth and brutality from spreading. Now, the thing about filth and brutality is it tends to keep itself from spreading. It's pretty good at doing that. A lot of people do not want to live under a brutal regime. And if it is filth, like something that is dangerous in terms of being able to spread bacteria, parasites, and viruses, that also tends to be a bit self-contained. This is not something that's going to spread. And if it spreads, people tend to think, wow, this is really bad. We should stop this practice. I don't know what's going on, but I know that when I engage in this behavior, this is causing me to be sick. Something's happening. So this, of course, is like pre-germ understanding. I don't think murder is the way to keep their filth and brutality from spreading. Now, it doesn't actually mention what these archaeologists found. They said they're going to vomit. We can't publish this. It's filthy. And usually when we use those terms, they're going to be referring to gay sex. You know, all the contextual clues are pointing to Jack Chick hinting at gay sex here. What brutality is that then? That the Israelites have to destroy and murder everything that this group stands for, to kill all the people because of a certain way they worship their deities. Do you know what I mean? What part of this says, yeah, they engage in some kind of gay sex? Let's just assume that's what is happening. Therefore, utterly destroy them, show no mercy, smite them. Again, how does Jack write this and think, yes, we're the good guys here? Ugh, it's disgusting. That's the disgusting. That's the part that makes me want to vomit, is that attitude. So in the next one, Jack Chick has some different art styles, and so this looks like more of his realistic art style. It's nice. So we see what looks like a city. It's kind of situated in the middle of a valley. And it says, the Bible is clear in revealing God's feeling towards homosexuality. Let's look at the city of Sodom, from whence comes the word sodomy. I like how people say this as if it's like natural that this word exists, like it exists in nature, that sodomy itself is not a word that people created because of their interpretation of the story of Sodom. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's saying that this word sodomy just exists. And by the way, did you realize that it's because of that Sodom? Yeah, of course. The people that believe in this issue being terrible, these are the people that came up with this term. Okay. God told Abraham that he was going to destroy Sodom because of its great wickedness. Abraham's nephew Lot lived in Sodom, and he begged for Lot's safety before God's judgment fell. Now let's wait a minute for, let's take a second. If Sodom was really that terrible, and if it was so bad that absolutely everybody that lived in Sodom was 100% evil constantly, which is what is believed by Christians about this, wouldn't Lot and his family also be evil? Like, why do they get to be saved just because they're related to Abraham? Shouldn't Abraham say, yeah, that city is terrible, my nephew lives there, but if God has judged that this city is 100% sinful, then my nephew is also 100% sinful. Like, what's he doing living there? If this was such a disgusting place, such a brutal place, what's he doing there? If this was so ungodly and Lot was so super godly, why does he maintain a residence in this place, right? I've never thought about that until just now. What's he doing there? If it's really that bad and that anti-Yahweh, why is he there? How come he gets to be saved? He's obviously okay with it. He lives there. He's part of it. So how come now it's a bad thing? Very, very strange. In the next panel, we have, looks like the entrance to Sodom, some dudes hanging out, and we see two cloaked figures entering. These are going to be the two angels that are referred to here. God sent two angels to Sodom to remove Lot from the city. See Genesis 19:1. And we've checked this out several times. Basically, the angels come in and say, hey, we're going to make sure you get out. God's going to blow this town up. And Lot is like, oh, what if I find like 50 righteous people? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. And he doesn't find it. Well, what if I find like 40 righteous? Yeah, try. What if I find 10 righteous people? Sure. What if I find one righteous guy? Okay, well, now we're going to destroy the city. Come on, let's go. And that's basically the story. Lot saw the angels as they came through the gate, and he is bowing in front of the angels. Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night. So, hang out at my place. And the angels are like, nah, man, we're going to hang out here. We're going to hang out in the street all night. What are these angels trying to do? Because if it's like, oh, it's the city where all the gay sex is happening, we should monitor that, shouldn't we, other angel? Oh yeah, we can't hang out at Lot's house. We need to be out in the streets to smite the gayness. Like, what are they doing? So we're supposed to believe this city is so evil and terrible that these angels are just going to come and take away Lot's family so they are not destroyed by God. And the angels are like, yeah, we're going to like hang out here for the night out in the wild streets. What are they doing? What's their plan? They know why they're here. They know what they're doing. Now, Lot says he was greatly troubled and finally persuaded them to stay with him. Again, why were they not going to stay with him originally? Why are they staying at all? Why aren't they just escaping? Why did they want to hang out in the streets with the street peoples, you know? So it says that it was a big occasion for Lot and he prepared a feast for them. But of course, in the panel, we see that Lot is just sitting. And his wife and daughters are the one preparing the feast, of course. In the next panel, we see Lot's home, and it is surrounded by individuals. Now, this is very, zombie movie, right? You hear, like, somebody breaking glass, and then all the zombies show up, and the camera zooms out, and we see, the zombies surrounding the house. That's very this. It says, at night before they retired, the homosexuals surrounded Lot's house. And one of them says, Lot! And it says, these were, quote unquote, gay men. I don't know why we're putting that in quotations. From every quarter of the city, both old and young, well practiced in every form of perversion. See Genesis 19:4. So let's see Genesis 19:4. Genesis, we got 19:1. Let's just go do it. Come on, Korean internet. So we see here in Genesis 19:4, it says, but before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all people from every quarter. You know what we're missing? We're missing the part of well practiced in every form of perversion. That's what we're missing. We're missing that they're gay men. We're missing that they're homosexuals. It doesn't say that whatsoever. It just says all the guys from Sodom came around the house, old dudes and young dudes. They're just hanging out. That's what it says. It mentions nothing about their intent. It mentions nothing about their personal sexual interests, and nothing whatsoever. So the fact that he's adding this in here, this was really something that I saw a lot at church. And I remember when I first read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, there was nothing about it that made me think, wow, gay people are awful. It made me think, wow, God hates rapists. And I also thought it was really gross that Lot, we're going to see it probably in the next few lines, yes, that Lot offers his daughters to be probably raped to death. And God's okay with that, but he just doesn't want his angels to be threatened with rape. That was really confusing for me to read. Nothing in there made me think, oh, this is gay stuff and obviously gay. And again, I read this when I was a Christian. I just wanted to know my Bible better. I wasn't trying to pick it apart. It wasn't me looking at it as an atheist, trying to be ultra critical of it or anything. I just read it and thought, how did people come to the conclusion that God hates gay people from this story? This is clearly about attacking angels. It's about rape. It's about not following God's rules, things like that. But nothing indicated to me, oh, it's because of gay stuff. Like, nothing indicated that to me at all. So in the next panel, we got this guy throwing his fist in the air, saying, "Lot, where are the men who came to see you tonight?" In the next panel, they're still shouting, "Send them out that we might know them," parentheses, sexually. That's what he's saying. To know them is to, know their bodies. And so in the next one, Lot, he's covering the door, and it says, "To protect the strangers in his home, Lot offered the crowd his 2 virgin daughters. They reject his offer." I mean, I don't want anybody to be attacked, but I guess if we're talking about like 2 young women, we don't know how old they are, but let's say they're teenagers, whatever. Because virgin can be translated. The word in Hebrew can either mean like a woman who's not married or like a young woman. So someone in her teen years. So let's just assume, hey, do you want to instead, do this horrible, unspeakable stuff to my 2 teen daughters? And the crowd's like, "No, we'd rather deal with the adult men that we saw and laid our eyes on and thought that they were for us to do this to." I mean, out of now, both groups are obviously terrible, but I mean, out of the 2, the crowd almost seems more honorable than Lot, don't they? Like, "No, we're not going to attack your 2 teen girls, Lot. We'd rather deal with the adult men that showed up." I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into it so much. And so Lot says, "Please don't do this great wickedness." And one man says, "Stand back, Lot." And another guy says, "This Lot came to live with us temporarily. Now he presumes to be a judge." Now, is this mentioned anywhere? 19:5, 6, 7, and 8. No, this is just about... There's nothing mentioned here. Oh, here it is, 19:9. Okay. About Lot being a judgmental guy. So it's basically, hey, he shows up in our city and he's not abiding by our rules. What kind of jerk is this guy? How dare he? So he's like, "Oh, we're going to deal with you even worse." And they came at Lot and almost broke down the door. The angels reached out and pulled Lot into the house and struck the men with blindness. And so we get this kind of a cool image where Lot's house is super bright, blinding bright, migraine bright. And it says, "The homosexuals wearied themselves trying to find the door." And we see these guys who, it looks like they're wandering around blindly. So I think, the drawing itself, they did a nice job with this, but okay, So Lot leaves, his family was removed safely, etc. And we get this archaeological note under this fire. Dr. M.G. Kyle in 1924 discovered the remains of a great fortified enclosure near the Dead Sea, dating somewhere between 2500 BCE and 2000 BCE. It had been a densely populated area. Evidence indicates that the population ceased abruptly. Also, Dr. Kyle pointed out that under Mount Uznam, there was a salt stratum 150 feet thick. Above it was another stratum of marl mingled with free sulfur. Gases exploded and literally rained fire and brimstone on Sodom. So for me, just reading this, first of all, this idea of like the pillar of salt, and there was a salt stratum 150 feet thick. Lot's wife was not 150 feet thick. But this also mentions that gases exploded and literally rained fire and brimstone on Sodom. That doesn't sound supernatural to me. Does it sound supernatural to you? And I remember this was really one of the things I thought about during my slow deconversion was this idea that people were saying Hurricane Katrina was some kind of punishment from God. And I thought, no, we know how hurricanes work. Again, I was Christian at this time. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. What if there was some kind of natural disaster, but not Christian, but religious people interpreted it as some kind of divine, harm from God, and that's what Sodom and Gomorrah, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah was about, was just some natural disaster. Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like a natural disaster. So, interesting. So now I guess we're back to the modern time. We see this guy. I don't know if he looks like he's dressed in black, but he's got a little white at his collar. I don't know if he's supposed to be a priest. And he's holding this guy that I think Jack Chick was in love with. This like dark-haired, kind of square-jawed guy. So it says, new laws are encouraging the sodomites, homosexuals, to take the offensive. And so this black-shirted dude says, you're offended by gays? Are you some kind of bigot? And the handsome Jack Chick's in love with man says, let go. What gay people are hanging out? Where is this? Behind like an alley? A restaurant's waiting area? I can't even tell where this is supposed to be. But where's like a gay guy just like grabbing a stranger and being like, hey, are you offended by gays? Are you some kind of bigot? Like where are they accosting people? What do you mean take the offensive? When did we have the great gay uprising of the year 2000? What reality did Jack Chick live in? It says, God's warning to homosexuals, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. We got that from Leviticus. We got one from 1 Corinthians. It talks about effeminate, and it says in parentheses homosexuality, which is not really expressed as far as I can remember. Effeminate had to do more with like laziness and not contributing to society as a man in a very patriarchal society. So you are as a woman, except you can't even produce children, so you're completely useless to society. Basically just like a type person that's very gluttonous, very sloth. So it really didn't have anything to do with being gay. But again, the effeminate, not every gay man is effeminate. So this is Jack Chick's own spin on it, really. This has nothing to do with what the text actually says. In the next one, we see a woman who perhaps is naked, don't know. She's sticking her head out of a door, yelling, come back, to a girl, another young woman, not a girl, who says, no. And it's, I guess, two lesbians, or one of them is a lesbian, the other one is rejecting these advances, I guess. It says, if you are exposed to this sin, then you must turn away from it. Only Jesus Christ can give you the strength to conquer it. This is not like an overdose of melatonin or something. You're not going to like slowly succumb to the gay. If you're not into this, like if you're not into somebody anyway, their sexual advances, you're going to be like, no thanks. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to be hanging out with like a coworker that you only tolerate as a coworker, and that person starts getting very handsy with you, tries to kiss you. You're not going to be like, oh, Jesus, please allow me to resist temptation. No, you don't like this person like that. You're going to shove them away and say, no, this is over. I'm going to leave. You don't need to rely on Christ to give you the strength to not make out with somebody that you don't like in that way. How is this any different? And this is where I have to ask, it kind of brings back this idea that I threw by you guys in a previous video about Jack Chick being a closeted bisexual. This idea that he thinks if he's around other men who start coming on to him, that he's going to succumb to it. If you are a heterosexual man, You are not going to succumb to a gay man's advances. If you are a heterosexual woman, you are not going to succumb to a lesbian's advances. The only way that you could feel tempted is if you're already sexually attracted to that person. And that's gay, straight, whatever. That's the only way you can be tempted by somebody's sexual advances, is if you're already sexually attracted to that person. So for this idea that Jack Chick is pressing like on everybody, that they all feel the same way he does, that if there's somebody of the same sex coming on to me, I'm tempted, and so I have to focus on Jesus so I'm not tempted, and I separate myself from the situation. I have to run away. Jesus has to give me the strength to conquer it. Jack, you're attracted to men. That's all. That's the only reasonable conclusion to come to this. You know, he's not saying that people are using force. You know, nobody's being handcuffed down so these lesbians can do lesbian things to this other person. It was literally they're hanging out, and I guess she wanted to be physical and the other person didn't, so she left. That's nothing to call on Jesus for, Jack. In the next one, we have somebody saying, I cannot change and I don't want to. I mean, cool. There's no reason, right? There's no reason. But it says in Romans 1:26, for this cause God gave them up until their vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And some people do argue that if you're born gay, that's your natural state. So to be changed against nature would be for a gay person to be heterosexual. But also there is sort of again, this kind of, bigoted idea that a woman's natural use is to be used and impregnated by men. So that doesn't really speak, like, this isn't the nice thing that maybe Jack wants to portray. This makes Christianity look backwards and uneducated. This is, again, how are you writing this and drawing this and thinking, yeah, we're the good guys here? And it says average life expectancy for the male homosexual before AIDS was only 42 years because of the venereal disease and violence. AIDS only reduced it to 39 years. And let's just assume he's right. Again, usually if he's trying to prove a point, he will include a source, and there is no source here. But so what? So what? We don't teach gay men about contraceptive or like prophylactic stuff because, it's only about birth control. We don't teach people proper condom use. And so people that don't use condoms get sexually transmitted diseases. Okay. And I like the one here, and violence. Well, Jack, who do you think is killing the gays? Do you think it's other gay men? Do you think they're getting into some weird fight to the death after they have gay sex with each other? Right? And then what about the female homosexual? How come he's only listing it for men? This is very cherry-picked and packaged in a very specific way that is so specific it looks suspicious, And then we just get Romans 1:27, which says that, they are using, they're having an unnatural lust for each other as well. So we see two dudes hanging out, and they're pointing at two other dudes, and one of the guys says, look, he's got a new one. Good for him. So this is, I guess, the idea that they're swapping sexual partners because gay men are unable to control themselves, and they're constantly dating other guys. And he says, good for him. Well, I mean, objectively, what's wrong with that? So what? He's got a new sexual partner. So what? Why is Jack so so worried about whose sexual partners are being changed and how frequently? Like, who cares? As long as they're having, safe, consensual sex, who cares? Why again is this how do you draw this and think, oh yes, the Christians are the ones that are the good guys here? The Romans 1:32 quote is, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. So this is a very Christian-centric kind of view, that they forget not everybody believes that. So this idea that we know the judgment of God and all of our sinful things that we do as non-Christians, that all those things are worthy of death, but we still commit them because we're just so sinful and terrible. What if we take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, they don't believe in that God, so they don't acknowledge this idea of judgment and sin, etc. So again, this is... And the idea here too is that, oh, look at these two men are having sex, they are worthy of death. That's really what Jack Chick is on board, and he's writing this and he's not thinking, maybe I'm on the wrong side. Very strange. Very strange. Homosexuality is one of many sins. There is also murder, lying, adultery, drunkenness, etc. Again, one of these things is not like the other, right? Murder, lying, and adultery, those are causing some kind of harm to other people, whether it is breaking somebody's trust, ending a life. These are not the same as two people of the same sex consensually entering a sexual and or romantic relationship. Drunkenness, I mean, if you're the type of person that gets violent when you're drunk, or you drunk drive, okay, I would say that's bad. Drunkenness by itself sounds like a personal issue. Why is that up there with murder and adultery? And even lying, why would that be there? So it says, all of us are guilty of some kind of sin, because the Bible says, for all have sinned and come short the glory of God. Now this thing is what Christians tell each other. So that way they're saying, no, I'm not a bigot. I don't hate gay people. It's just that's one sin, and there's many sins. I'm also a sinner, and that's why I'm a Christian, because that way I can follow God and get my sins washed clean, etc., etc. They don't realize, again, there's not like a bunch of chick tracts dedicated to adultery and drunkenness, and I don't even think there's any dedicated to lying or murder. But there's 6 dedicated to homosexuality, as if that's the biggest sin being committed in the society. Seems pretty odd. It gives the impression to me, again, using that, that idea that Jack Chick was secretly bisexual, it kind of gives me the idea that he produced these to remind himself, I can't give in to the gay feelings. I just can't. And so maybe he produced a new chick tract every time he was exceptionally tempted or something. So this is, the ending wrap up about, John 3:16, you will be transformed into a new creature. Otherwise you're going to go to hell, and nobody else can save you. Trust Jesus today. Well, how do I know I can trust Jesus, right? How do I even know that? What, nobody else can save me, trust Jesus? Well, how do I know I can trust Jesus? Because you told me that I can trust Jesus? Well, how can I trust you? So it's a very... Anyway, that was the gay blade. So my predictions, not true, just more rehashing of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I worry that maybe the next 2 will be like that as well, but we shall see. On that note, guys, thank you for joining me. Please feel free to post comments in the comment section below. If you want to check out some other stuff that I do, there's different ways to find me on social media in the pinned comment, as well as Patreon if you want to support what I do. That's also in the pinned comment. But as always, guys, thanks for listening.